Welcome in, post-game edition of the Scores Table. Brian Haenchen and Danny Riego with you, coming to you after Eastern Hancock pulls out a 62-55 win over Lapel, battle between the second and fourth ranked teams in Class 2A. And Danny's second time in a row now in less than a week that we're talking, and a battle between two of the top teams in their class. And it honestly lived up to the billing. It's just an excellent game.
Yeah, that one felt different. That one felt different in there. There was a lot of strategy. There was a lot of coaching. I thought the stars came out, the kids that we expected to really do well. And then it also had some unsung heroes. But it had a lot of drama that unfolded. Good pep band, good crowd. I had a good time.
Yeah, shouts to the pep band, too, before we get into this. They were phenomenal.
They did like Blink 182. I maybe heard some Belle Biv DeVoe. They were really good.
Yeah, shouts to Lapel's pep band, man. They were freaking phenomenal. I mean, there's so many different places to start, but I feel like the best place to start is the kid that we wrapped up the podcast talking about with earlier today, and that's Kenzie Cook. I mean, that was my first time seeing her in person, and she was unbelievable tonight with just her ability to create shots, and she hit some huge shots for Lapel or for Eastern Hancock come down the stretch. Most notably, I think they get it back to within a 3-point game midway through the fourth quarter, and she steps up and she drills a 3-pointer and carried that fall through as she was bouncing back on defense. But just an excellent performance from the freshman who's really shined as the games have gotten tougher for Eastern Hancock over the past week.
Yeah, the moment didn't look too big for Kenzie Cook. And let's not forget, this is a kid that's only played 9 varsity basketball games. She's a true freshman, class of 27. And I think it's foreshadowing what we're going to see for the next 4 years. And Sherry has a lot of superlatives when she describes her. I was proud of her. You mentioned a 3 that she hit. I think it was a 4-point basketball game, and it was the one where she held the follow through. There was another 3, and kind of one of the turning points of the basketball game. There was a bookend run where Lapel at the end of the third quarter scores the last basket on a buzzer beater by, I think I wrote it down, Amaya Nunn. And then they get the possession arrow. And then Lapel scores again in the first possession of the fourth quarter. They end up extending that 5-0 run to a 7-0 run. And it actually gave Lapel their first second half lead. And the very next possession, Kenzie Cook hit a 3 and put them up 48 to 46. Just a cold-blooded 3. But she made big shots all night. That, like I said, the moment didn't seem too big for her. She was big time. She was a lot of fun to watch.
12 lead changes within the first quarter alone, 14 in the first half, just to illustrate how close and back and forth they were. And you talked about the matchups, and you texted immediately. Rob Hunt from the Herald Bulletin, who I was sitting next to him, press row, pointed out immediately, and that was how Lapel guarded Kenzie Cook out of the gates. And they had Lania Wills, their star sophomore, on her, guarding her right away. And it was interesting just how the chess match unfolded, because Lapel seemed to – the way that Eastern Hancock saw it was they just kind of rotated based off who had the hot hand between her and Maddie Pointer, who was guarding Cook and who was guarding Sammy Bolding. And then for Lapel, they kind of said as much, like, we're going to throw a bunch of different looks at them, and that's just how we play defense. But it was fascinating. What did you make of the defensive matchups there over the course of the night?
Well, that was a big part of the game flow. I think a huge part of the game flow. And yes, Lania Wills, spread her wings and got in front of Kenzie Cook on the first possession. And I was like, okay, here we go. And I kind of suspected it was going to happen. Lania Wills guarded Jacqueline Hosier, who's Alexander's standout 25 over there. And that was a big matchup for Lapel. But fouls really kind of took that away from us. I thought Lapel moved Wills. She picked up an early foul, and I think they moved Wills off of her. We didn't regain that matchup, that defensive matchup, until again in the fourth quarter when Wills was like, just look, enough is enough. But yeah, I always think when the best player guards the other team's best player, I think it says a lot. And to me, I'm sure there's maybe less that goes into it, but I just feel like that's a player stepping up in the moment. That's just, she wants the challenge. So it was really cool. And I think Kenzie, she had kind of a look in her eye that she kind of knew that this one was a little bit different too. And I think she fully expected Lania Wills to be guarding her as well.
I think I come away from this game, and I wrote this in a story that'll publish tomorrow morning, but I think these things hold true. I think that those are both two teams that are capable of winning a state championship in Class 2A. I think that Eastern Hancock, with their depth and their balance of their lineup, with just, and then Ruby White inside gives them such a unique weapon with having a 6'1" post player, especially at that level. We saw it last year. We're seeing it again this year. Just unique talent there, not to mention the shooters that they have. And then for Lapel, I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find a better twosome than you get there with Lanai and Maddie Pointer, and some really good experienced pieces around them. But at the same time, I think right now Eastern Hancock is the better team in large part due to the experience. And we saw Lapel's lack of experience come into play there late. And Zach Newby talked about it after the game and just how they handled certain situations. And then, too, a big thing that he harped on was the lack of communication on defense, which resulted in a lot of backdoor cuts and a lot of open threes, especially for Sammy Bowling. And she was hitting tonight. And you can't expect to beat Eastern Hancock when she's hitting and you're giving her those shots like that. Same with Cook, and then same with gosh, her name is escape me right now, but I'll find it here and shout her out randomly in a minute. But put up some open shots there, and it's creating, it led to the result that we saw there tonight, where Eastern Hancock was able to pull away, and that youth too. It came into effect in the lack of communication on defense. Brooklyn Willis, by the way, hit the other 3-pointer. The lack of communication on defense was a big factor, but then too late in the game where Lapel let 10 seconds, a couple 10-second chunks burn off the clock before they were able to foul and stop it late. And that, again, is just the youth and experience where those kids didn't know how to react in that situation, some of the younger kids. And, I mean, that's to be expected of a young team that's being tested really for the first time and in that situation for the first time. So definitely really excited about the future for both teams, but, that experience factor. And that adds some extra emphasis to this stretch for Lapel when they're playing Monroe Central next, and they have Hamilton Heights after this to close out the month of December.
Well, I remember Coach Newby with Lapel, coaching late game situations in the state championship. And so it's all battle testing. I do think that there were some opportunities there where they let some precious seconds get away from him, which maybe could have extended the basketball game. By that point in time, though, Eastern Hancock had I think, firm control of what the outcome was going to be. Again, Thursday night we saw a 9-0 run in 80 seconds. So I guess we shouldn't take anything for granted, but I'm going to go to the other side. I actually have a frame of reference when talking about Eastern Hancock and Sherry Dowd. I went to their opener and they played at Morristown. Shout out to the Beehive, I think they call it. It's a Class A school on the southeast side. I think you take US 52 and you just run right through it. But I'm sitting there watching Kenzie Cook's first ever high school basketball game. I'm watching a basketball team that, quite frankly, and I think I would say this to Sherry, it looked like a mess. It just did. I think they had individual pieces. I don't think there was a lot of connectivity. And I don't think anybody really understood their role. Having watched them a couple of times on stream throughout there, you started to see it progressively get better. And I thought tonight, Sherry needs to take a bow, because what she's done since that first basketball game at Morristown to the product that just won by a couple of possessions at Lapel in a big high stakes 2-way game. I think everybody understands their role. I think everybody's starring in their role. I think everybody understands each other. There's more communication. They just looked connected. They looked very well coached. And so, Sherry doesn't have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wins, I guess, for no reason, but she's done a great job with that team.
Yeah, that's what Sherry talked about too after the game, was that she said this felt like the first time that her team looked together, and that they played as a team, and they got those contributions from everybody. And, even the kids who weren't scoring, she made sure to point out that they gave them something. And it was a collective team effort, and it was the first time that they'd really seen it. And two, it's interesting listening to that, talking to Sammy Boulding afterwards and Kenzie, is just how even this team has grown in the past 7 days. Because when they were in a one game, they were holding a 1 point win over North Decatur in overtime about a week ago. I asked, how were you guys responding in that situation? And Sammy was pretty open about it. Like, they were nervous. They were nervous, and there wasn't positive energy. And it took them getting through that game, finding a way to win, to sort of turn it. Then you get Cathedral, and you find a way to win that game by 3, and it's another step positive. And then tonight against Lapel, in a really tight space, you see that evolution come to kind of fruition. You know what I mean? Where they get the lead and they put the hammer down. Lapel's on the other side of that spectrum right now, but I fully believe that they're going to get there. And if you play this game again, which we might do in February, who knows what happens? I think it's a tighter finish. Maybe we can go to overtime. So bookmark this when it goes to overtime. But It is. It was a fun game to watch. Two really exciting teams to be around, and I mean, I was really impressed.
You mentioned Sammy Boulding. I want to talk about her a little bit, and I'm going to ask Coach Sherry Dowd to share a little bit of the spotlight with her, because one of the other changes through the first 7, 8, 9 basketball games is I think Sammy Boulding is just coming off of an injury and just playing in her third or fourth basketball game. And so look, she's an athlete, verbally committed, I think, to Toledo to play softball. She had 18 tonight, okay, and 18 big points. To use a softball analogy, I felt like she just kept hitting singles and doubles and put men on base for Kenzie Cook to hit homers later. But I don't think it can be understated how great of a job she did on the defensive side of the floor. I don't want to say she put, Maddie Pointer on lock, but that's a key piece of Lapel's offense, and they run a lot through her, and she does a really good job in getting downhill, getting north and south. She likes to get to her right hand. She likes to get into the paint. But I thought Sammy really recognized angles. I thought she cut off driving angles. She kind of knew when she had help when Ruby was clogging up the paint, but she made Pointer really work for everything that she got tonight. She really had to work for it. And so I thought she was really had an understated effect on this basketball game. And it really came on the defensive side outside of the 18 points that she scored.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I go back to it, just like so much balance. Like Sammy's been a known quantity for a while, but it's like you have her and you have Ruby White back, and then you have, you have Kenzie Cook coming in and stepping right in at point guard where they lost their one starter from last year. They haven't skipped a beat. And then you have, they just have so many pieces and everything fits together so well. Brooklyn Willis, who hit that big 3-pointer that I couldn't remember earlier. I'm going to say her name again just so I don't forget it. But Brooklyn Willis hits some big shots, and it's fun to see that cycling. And it's such a unique thing for a Class 2A school to have that assortment of wealth. It's reminiscent of Lapel last season with so many veteran seniors, a high-end talent.
Well, I made a note in my phone about Ruby White. I thought she did a great job defensively kind of positioning herself. Like Lapel adjusted to that really well. They started moving her out of the paint and getting Willis some perimeter touches where she could attack Ruby off the bounce. And we'll get onto the Lapel side of this here in a little bit. But to complete this thought on Ruby, I looked up after the basketball game at the scoreboard where they keep individual stats just to look at like fouls and points, and she had 10. And I kind of leaned over to the guy that I was watching the game with, and I was like, I kind of felt like she had more than 10. And his response was, if she only had 10, it means that she scored in really big spots. And if my memory serves me correct, I think Eastern Hancock was down a point at the half. By the way, here's a lesson to the players out here. There was a really unassuming possession at the end of the second quarter when Lapel had the basketball. There's a little bit of a deflection, a little bit of a scrum, and an Eastern Hancock kid dives on the basketball, causes a jump ball, and flips the arrow to Eastern Hancock. Okay. Seems like an irrelevant play. Lapel ends up retaining possession at the end of the second quarter and not converting. So they take their 1-point lead into the half. But because of that jump ball, Eastern Hancock gets the ball coming out. Kenzie Cook gets a driving lane in the middle third, very simply draws help. And I thought Kenzie Cook made the right play almost every single time down the floor. I mean, I can remember one dribble right-hand pass that she threw late. That was a little bit ill-advised. I know that the coaching staff Yeah. That's probably the one that she wanted back. But back to that play to start the third quarter or start the second half, they're down 1. She gets a drive in middle third, draws help off the strong side corner, kicks it to Ruby White, and she hits a little 15-footer, and it gives them the lead. And then you look up, and I thought Lapel was leading, not the majority, but at least leading late in the second half. And then you look up and you're winning the basketball game. And I think it got the half going in a right way. They got into a rhythm because it was just a very simple play made by Kenzie Cook, but Ruby White hit the shot. And I felt like all 10 of her points came in really big spots just like that.
One last thought on Eastern Hancock before we talk Lapel. Cook had this play. It wound up being nothing, but where she's sprinting down full speed with Lanaya Wills on her left. Then she stops and manages to maintain her pivot foot. Like she plants that sucker right down on the side of the lane, manages to stop, has the wherewithal to pivot while still maintaining it, swings around, finds a teammate, and just launches a pass across the lane to her teammate who grabs it, missed the layup. My God, Like, just her
Yeah.
ability to stop on a dime like that was wild. I mean, she was almost in the splits coming down the baseline. And then
Very close to a walk. I was actually sitting on the other side of the floor. I thought it was a walk.
yeah, no, I had video and I watched it back, and I tweeted out, she keeps that foot down, and it was incredible. And then credit
That's
to
fun.
Lanaya too, because she over pursues and she gets back and makes a play and forces that layup to come in an awkward angle
Yeah.
to miss. So now we talk about Lapel, and as we were discussing this, and it dawned on me in the moment, but it didn't really fully register with everything else that happened. But Lapel did a really good job with his two best players out for most of the second quarter with foul trouble, and for long stretches of the third with one or both of them on the bench again due to foul trouble. I mean, that was impressive again for such a young team.
Yeah, I think Lapel learned a lot about themselves tonight. Um, when I'll skip to kind of the climax early here in this, but Pointer goes to the bench with her third foul. She went to the bench with her second foul, ended up coming back, and it didn't really hurt them necessarily. But when she goes to the bench with the third foul, Eastern Hancock was starting to put their grasp on the basketball game, I think, at that point in time. And this is not an original thought. I have to give credit where credit's due. I was actually sitting by Randy Beckett, who runs IGBRR. And a lot of people know him. He covers the girls' game at the high school level and does it really well. He seems to be everywhere. But Randy said to me, "Well, we might see the transformation here. This is the first time all year that Wills has had Pointer on the bench in a big spot." And dude, Wills responded. Like, she was so good from the jump too. Like, I jotted down. I was jotting down notes in my phone, and in the first quarter alone, I saw her have an assist. I saw her hit 2 free throws. I saw her hit a 3. I saw her deflect the basketball. I saw her block a shot. Saw her get an offensive rebound putback. Like, that kid's it's what we said kind of leading up to it, that the kid does everything. And she did it all in the first 8 minutes of the basketball game. But late in that game, when Pointer was on the bench, she was in her bag. She was doing what she wanted. She was getting to her spot. She was finishing. She was getting and one. She was making her free throws. She was starting to get after her teammates a little bit. She was a joy to watch tonight, and a really big time player in a big time game. Just came up short and just really needed somebody to come with her.
Yeah. Did you notice? Did Eastern Hancock, did they switch defensive assignments inside on Wills late?
So they didn't, and I think that was something that Lapel did well. And I don't know if it came from the bench or if it was something that instinctively Lanaya did. But Lanaya was really spent a lot of the first 2 quarters on strong side block, and that's fine. She's probably very effective there against Madison Grant. All due respect to Madison Grant, I don't know why I picked them, but on Ruby White, that's a difficult thing for her to do. And I think she started to catch the ball on the perimeter, started to realize that she had some driving angles. And then once she got around her one time, I think she's just like, this kid can't guard me. All due respect to Ruby White, she can't on the block, but on the perimeter, Lanaya Willis is a load for anybody to stay in front of. And I thought she recognized that. I thought she did it was a really big girl IQ move to really recognize that and exploit that before they could adjust. But they never really switched. I thought there were some opportunities. Like, there was a baseline out of bounds play where everybody kind of lobs it in and posts it. Everybody runs it. And it's like a fake handoff. They ran it early in the basketball game. Lanaya Willis kept the basketball, but she handed it off to Pointer late. And I was thinking, I was like, well, you already have Ruby White on you and you're 20 feet away from the basket. Just fake the handoff, reverse pivot, and take her to the hole. I thought she had opportunities like that. And I was actually watching the basketball game with a coach after the game. And I mean this with all due respect to Lapel's coaching and the way Lanaya plays. But the first thing he said to me was, Lanaya passes too much. Like, he thinks there's just more opportunity for her to go. And I tend to agree, particularly when you have a matchup like that that's favorable for driving.
Yeah. Lapel fell behind by 8. They came back in the fourth to make a game of it. They had the lead there in the fourth, which honestly I'd forgotten about, because it just, the way that Eastern Hancock finished so strongly, I'd forgotten about that. But I think it was a 14-4 run, I want to say. I'm trying to check the checkers. It goes 14-7 run for Eastern Hancock to close out the game. But you can see the pieces are there. They have good bones. And most nights it's Maddie Pointer not in foul trouble playing alongside Lanaya Wills. And and it works there. But you can see the other piece coming along. I mean, you have a couple sophomores, I think it is, playing their first varsity minutes and kind of experiencing this tight game situation for really the first time all year. They've been in, Newbie said we've been in similar situations earlier this year, kind of, sort of, but some of these kids weren't playing then. So this is their first real experience. And I mean, you can simulate this in practice, but really the only thing that's going to work for you is in-game experience. And that's what they got tonight. That's what they're going to get again next week with Hamilton Heights. And then I get some well-deserved time off. I mean, they've played a lot of games through the first couple months, and Newbie said, look, they're tired. They deserve a break. I'm tired. We just got to keep grinding, keep battling here, and get to December 19th in that last game against Hamilton Heights. And then they're off until the new year with the start of their county tournament. So, it was good to see them early in this season, and I'm interested to see how different they look even just a week from now. Because, again, I think that Eastern Hancock kind of shows you how quickly that progression go, and now it's Lapel's turn to see how quickly they can learn and adjust and grow and get to that point as well.
They got better tonight. There's no question. They got better tonight, and they're going to be a load. They're going to be a really, really tough out when both Wills and Pointer are cranking. But I think the one thing we learned tonight is if one does go down, at least Wills with Pointer going down. I mean, she kind of went into takeover mode, which was, again, I keep saying it. It was just so fun to watch. I mean, it just felt like a big time 4A game is what it felt like. You talked about what's next for Lapel.
Sure. Real quick.
Interestingly, what's next for Eastern Hancock? December 30th, they play in a little 4-game holiday tournament, and I actually looked to see if there was the link on John Harrell's site, and I don't think it's up yet, but they play out. There's a little 4-team tournament with Eastern Hancock, Elkhart, Westfield, and Lawrence North. And Elkhart, I mean, look, Ken Hunt, friends call him Tennessee. Like, what he's doing up there, he's building it, but he's still a couple years away. If Eastern Hancock can get by that basketball game on December 30th, that night, they're going to play Lawrence North or Westfield. I mean, I think Lawrence North will be favored in that basketball game. Westfield is certainly capable of winning it. Both of them will be tough matchups. But can you imagine if Eastern Hancock has to go against Lawrence North? And they're really kind of going to help each other. One, Eastern Hancock isn't going to see a team like Lawrence North in 2A, most likely. I know the Knox teams, North and South Knox, are really good, and even Westfield. But Lawrence North also, I mean, Eastern Hancock is they're like a baby version of Center Grove. They're kind of constructed the same way with Wirtz being Ruby White and the perimeter scoring and the shooting and the good decisions and the downhill attacking. So I think it'll be a good test for both of them. But December 30th should be circled on every girls basketball fan's calendar, because you'll get to see one of the top 2A teams presumably play one of the top 2 or 3 4A teams, and that'll be fun.
Pausing real quickly, and speaking of Westfield's won tonight 65-56. They pulled away from Avon, so good win for them. Yep. Avon continues to just lurk, and they're going to be a dangerous team come sectional. But real quickly, last thought on Lapel, you mentioned how Lanaya learned to step up when Madeline was out. I remember that state championship game last year when Forest Park managed to take away Lanaya and kind of made her a non-factor a little bit. I mean, it was Maddie Pointer who put the team on her back and had the shot at the end of the game that I think everybody, at least on the Lapel side, and certainly from my perspective, thought that shot she got off was good, and it just rimmed out. But, I mean, she's a tremendous talent too, and I really like Lapel. I know, again, that they're young and they have some pieces that they're bringing along, but for both of them, I mean, they have such a good core, and I mean, at the 2A level, they have those pieces necessary, it feels like, to separate themselves from the field, similar to what we've seen with Forest Park and some of the other top teams in 2A.
Yeah, Lapel goes north, correct? And then so Eastern Hancock has to deal with North Knox and South Knox, both of those teams down there. So we'll see what comes out of that mess. But if we do see Eastern Hancock versus Lapel again, it's going to be for the blue ring.
I think so. Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know. I don't know the regions that well, but yeah, probably.
Yeah. I believe that's correct.
But then again, Carmel plays in the South in soccer, so down is up, left is north, and we all tickle each other. So who the hell knows? It's just a grab bag. But no, it was a fun game. This was fun. This was the real highlight of the night. Danny was getting to sit here and talk with you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Hank, thanks for all you do, man.
Yeah, thank you. We'll probably be back. We'll probably do another one of these after Mudsock on Saturday. But in the meantime, read my story. Check out the full podcast. We have it up online now. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.